Okay, so welcome, Congressman Lehود, and it's an honor to have you in our platform. So you have worked on sanctions targeting Lebanese political figures, and Speaker Nabih Berri has been mentioned in discussions about corruption and the political protection of Hezbollah. So do you believe sanctions against figures like Berri are still on the table?
Well, I think I don't make the sanctions in the United States. That's something that happens through the administration. But obviously, my role in Congress as the co-chair of the US-Lebanon Friendship Caucus, we play a role in making recommendations. I will also just say the changes that have happened to Lebanon in the last year are very positive. But there are still many things that have to change in order for Lebanon to become a sovereign, independent, and prosperous nation moving forward. Many people within the administration, including the president and Secretary Rubio, want to see Lebanon succeed. But it seems like there are figures in Lebanon that don't want to see that success happen. And so I, along with my colleague, Congressman Darrell Issa, we sent a letter to the president in the fall on this issue of looking at sanctions as a leverage mechanism to go after elites in Lebanon, some of the oligarchs in Lebanon, and elected officials. And politicians. And if they're not going to move forward with the progress that needs to happen on disarmament of Hezbollah, on passing the gap law in the parliament, and working on an election that happens in May that allows the diaspora to vote, then sanctions ought to be an option on that. So I know the Treasury Department in the United States, in this administration, is looking at all options. So that's one of the tools in the toolbox we ought to be looking at. And to think that President Trump will not move forward with sanctions is a mistake by people in Lebanon.
Mm-hmm. Is there coordination between the U.S. Congress and the Treasury Department to expand sanctions as Lebanese individuals linked to corruption or Hezbollah financials network?
Yes, there is communication on a regular basis between the members of Congress, including myself, and the Treasury Department. As you may know, in the fall, there was a group of officials from the White House, Sebastian Gorka and his team that were there, along with a number of officials from the Treasury Department to look at this main issue on what is holding up the progress that needs to be made in Lebanon. And we are in close consultation, the Congress and the administration, on watching the progress that needs to happen in Lebanon. And if we don't see progress, I think those options will be on the table.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Hezbollah and the disarmament. You have raised concerns about Hezbollah weapons. From Washington's perspective, is that disarmament of Hezbollah still a realistic objective, or has it become a long-term containment strategy?
It is definitely not long-term. It is immediate. We continue to push President Joseph Aoun and his government, the Prime Minister, Nawaf Salam, that they need to continue with disarmament. I was in Lebanon in August. I went down to south of the Litani with the LAF and saw the work that's being done there. Some progress is being made, and I want to give credit to the government and the LAF, but more progress has to be made. And this is an objective that the United States is watching closely. Our U.S. military, our National Security Council, our intelligence services, and the State Department. Progress needs to be made at a more rapid pace on disarmament. From our perspective, Hezbollah has been a cancer within Lebanon that has caused many, many problems. Disarmament has to happen. You can't have an armed militia within an independent and prosperous country there. So we got to continue to help the LAF, along with other like-minded allies, to move for total disarmament in the Bekaa and north of the Litani.
Mm-hmm. But should future U.S. assistance to Lebanon be conditioned more strictly on limiting Hezbollah military and political influence?
I think all of those things have to be on the table. If goals are not met, if tangible objectives are not being achieved, there has to be consequences.
Mm-hmm. If we're going to talk about the financial gap law and economic reform, Lebanon's proposed financial gap law and has sparked controversial, with critics saying it protects political elites while shifting looters onto ordinary citizens. So how does Congress view this legislation?
Well, the parliament in Lebanon has to legislate there, and I want to be careful about dictating how they should legislate. But what happened to the banking system and the economy in Lebanon, 5, 6 years ago, was a disaster. Having bank accounts eviscerated up to $90 billion is unacceptable. People have to be held accountable for that. You can't move forward without reforms. And so if you look at the gap law and how that reforms the banking system, that has to be a prerequisite to Lebanon moving forward, holding people accountable, making sure these things don't happen again, giving confidence to the Lebanese people that it's safe to put their money in the bank accounts there. It's also very much tied to the IMF and what they're doing, the International Monetary Fund, and the criteria that's been put out by them. So it's very important that Lebanon makes these reforms and moves quicker within the parliament to reform these banking laws and show the world and the allies that they can, in fact, reform their system and put in place enforceable measures that hold people accountable.
Mhm. You've visited the Syrian president in November. What you can share with us about this visit?
I had the opportunity to visit with President al-Shara in Damascus in November. I serve on our House Intelligence Committee. I think it's important that we remember that the Assad regime that was there for 50 years was very disruptive to Lebanon in terms of the land corridor that allowed Hezbollah to ship weaponry into southern Lebanon. Having the Assad regime gone now is a positive thing. We need to work with President al-Shara and his team as they begin the transition to a functioning democracy and government. And so the U.S. looks at this as an opportunity, but there will have to be progress made internally within Syria. But it presents a wonderful opportunity, again, working with the Turks, working with the Qataris, working with other allies to support President al-Shara and give him the building blocks to be a successful nation. That will be good for Lebanon and the greater Middle East.
In Iran, the protests renewed across several cities. And how does Congress interpret the current situation? And do you see it as a turning point for the Iranian regime?
Well, we're watching it very, very closely, as the world is too, to see what happens. But clearly the people of Iran are rising up against the mullahs and the regime that rule Iran. And so I think you got to be careful about dictating what happens within the country, but seeing the people rise up and being frustrated by the current regime there, I think is positive news. I would also just say, if you look at the malign activities of Iran in the region, whether it's supporting Hamas in Gaza, supporting Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, supporting the Shia proxies in Iraq, supporting Assad in Syria, supporting the Houthis in Yemen, they have been very disruptive throughout the Middle East. And so holding them accountable, seeing a country that puts an end to that type of activity and comes into the modern world is something I think we should all be supportive of. I think we got to be careful about dictating what happens within the country, but we have to be ready to support freedom-loving people within Iran.
Mm. Do you believe the U.S. should recalibrate its Iran policy?
Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens through this protest movement. But I think President Trump sent a very strong message during the 12-day war back earlier in June by taking out the nuclear capabilities there. And I think Iran should be listening to the United States, and we ought to be doing all we can to encourage change in Iran.
Mm-hmm. What message would you send to the Lebanese people who feel caught between economic collapse, political corruption, and the regional power struggles?
This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for Lebanon, a country that has so many assets, an educated workforce, a country that has natural beauty, a country that has a very successful diaspora. This is an opportunity to turn around the economy, to fix the country like never before. So the stars have aligned in Lebanon, and you have a president in President Trump that wants to see Lebanon succeed. And if you look at our support for the LAF, our building of a brand new embassy there, what we were able to do with the cessation of hostilities and getting that agreement, setting up the mechanism to monitor between the IDF and the LAF. I mean, all these things happened under U.S. leadership. That will continue, but Lebanon has to make progress on their own. And if they do that, they're going to find a willing partner in the United States to make Lebanon, again, the successful nation that it can be and be independent and prosperous and freedom-loving for the future.
In the beginning, I start to say, we count on you as a Lebanese people. I don't know, how do you see this responsibility?
Well, I am proud to represent 8,000 Lebanese families in the Peoria area in my own district. I'm proud of my own Lebanese heritage. But I look at what Lebanese have contributed to the United States in so many different ways here, and the strong diaspora that we have in the United States that's contributed to the patchwork of the success of the United States. But I also look at a beautiful country in Lebanon and an opportunity for it to transition to success. Now is the time to do that.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.